So I'm going to talk about a revolution of the mind. I belong to the generation of people in this audience that was the first generation on the island that we were born free. Actually, I'm cheating by 1 year my age. But you realize that it's one thing to be born legally free, but it takes lots of time until you are mentally free. They tell us it takes 3 generations until some old traditions are broken. Many people hear the story of Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and he was wandering around for 40 years in the desert. Now, this is 100 square kilometers, more or less. So how come it took him 40 years to find his way? Now, some people say, well, because he did not have a GPS, so he got lost. Well, in reality, he was very smart. He kept them wandering for 40 years until he himself was about to die, so all the memories of slavery will be gone. So I'm going to talk about how do we get out of this tradition we have been carrying with us. My generation was the first generation to be born free. Many people in the audience is the second generation, and I don't think we should wait for 40 years in the desert before we get out of trouble. But let's see the kind of trouble you have been getting into. People recognize this photograph? The Vasilikos power plant. My parents' generation were building it for 50 years, and in one day, we blew it up. And in the process of blowing it up, we killed 13 people. Cyprus 2012, the first time we have unemployment lines for many years. People standing in line waiting for unemployment benefits. If you want to get a little bit more technical to substantiate what I'm saying, this is the spidergram from the European Commission on the Cyprus fiscal sustainability. Now, it's a long story behind this chart, but I will look at the 3 main axes. It talks about the probability of an immediate crisis. We get 100%, we all know that. The difficulty of financing an aging population, we get 9 out of 10, almost complete disaster. And the ability of creating a primary account balance. Our government stopped being in the negative, and we get 100 there as well. So in all the major axes of discussing the economy, we managed to have a perfect crisis. Now, this is nice for people who are writing papers about it, like myself, but it's not nice for the young people. So what I'm going to discuss today is how do we take this step? And I found this photograph, this painting, and if the painter is in the room, I would love to meet them. You see the people of Cyprus painted on the wall. None of them is wearing shoes. Somehow they lost their shoes. Some of them actually lost their clothes. And in front of them, there is this floor full of simple shoes. And the question is, how do you make this very small but very important step? It's a small step, but it's a very difficult step. You don't have shoes to take a step to get shoes. And also you realize something else. It's in different dimensions. They are all standing on the wall. They have their mental way of thinking in 2 dimensions. And it only takes a small step in the 3rd dimension to make a huge difference. Well, we are trapped. Well, we are not trapped. We are in a vicious circle of collapse. My point is we are not trapped. What is the vicious circle of collapse? You can start from anywhere you want, but I will start from the top. Lack of confidence. A group of people that do not have confidence, they are ambivalent. What should they do? And if you are ambivalent, you postpone. And if you postpone, you appear incompetent. And because you appear incompetent, you lack your confidence. Things work like this in this circle for 2 important reasons. If you are ambivalent and you postpone, the world is not going to work to your advantage. We live in an uncertain world. So if you do not take action, it's only by chance that things will work well for you. And then why do you feel incompetent? Because the world is very complex. So look at the complexity and the fact that chance does not work in your advantage, you feel incompetent, you lose your confidence, and the cycle repeats. See how this vicious circle worked in Marie. We could not decide what to do with the explosives. Should we send them to Iran? Should we send them to Syria? Should we give them to the Americans? Should we send them back to the United Nations? The president says, let's have another meeting. The Minister of Defense says, well, you can store them anywhere. You can put them in a residential area. They're safe. The Minister of Foreign Affairs says, well, why don't we send a sample to Greece to test the explosives? What are the explosives saying? They say, my God, nobody's asking us. We're sitting here in the middle of this terrible weather. I think I'm going to blow up. And sure enough, this is what happens at the end. Very sad story. The vicious circle in the economy. Greece, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, from the moment they realize they have a problem and they ask help, until they sign an agreement of what they should do with their problem, it took them 50 days. For 250 days, we're still negotiating. In the meantime, things don't work out well. We keep piling up debt. The blue line is the increase of our income, and the red line is the increase of our debt. Problems are getting more difficult. This is a picture nobody shows us, but it's important to keep it in mind. We are increasing our ecological footprint. The available ecological capacity of the country is going down, is the green line, basically by over-exploding water resources and arable land, and our needs are going up. We need 6.5 times the size of the island to sustain us. And of course, in politics, we follow the politics as usual. Not so much policies to solve problems, but the tactics to stay in power. Recycling people in government without realizing the very important observation Albert Einstein made. You cannot solve problems by using the same kind of mindset that you used when you created them. So the same kind of politics that created the problem, we are now recycling them, hoping we are going to solve the problem. We will not. Jared Diamond, one of the TED speakers, I believe was some time ago, I forgot to check it last night, he wrote a brilliant book about collapse. But the subtitle of the book is How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed. There are some things that failed civilizations had done that led them into a trap that eventually collapsed. Can we reverse the vicious circle of collapse? This is my question. Now, I was writing a book when I came into Jared Diamond's excellent book called Creative Cyprus, Δημιουργική Κύπρος, Political Reform for Cyprus in the 21st century. And I realized, as I was writing the book, how things have been developing wrong in our country. And then the Marie thing happened. So I said, my God, this was supposed to happen. I realized that we can't get out of this trap. We can't reverse the cycle. So the first thing to do to reverse the cycle is to decide to react. React means two things. First is to push back. There is action. We have centuries of tradition of being non-free people. It's time to decide enough with it. We are pushing back. But also is to act differently. Marina put it in. She told me as the first speaker I had to wake up the audience. Actually, guys, the first thing is to wake up. So I see the explosion of Marie and the reaction of the people of the country. At some level was political, but most importantly was a wake-up call. People of the country woke up and said, my God, what are we doing here? So the first step is to react. To react, to start a revolution, we have to recognize, I don't start with policy, I start with poetry. I'm the master of my fate, I'm the captain of my soul. For the first time in centuries, we're the masters of our fate, we're the captains of our soul. So now it's time for us to think. We are very happy now we don't have the Sultan or the Queen to think for us, but we think we have our own president to think for us. This is not true. We are the government, so we have to rethink. And what do we have to rethink? We have to understand the world we live in. There is uncertainty, there is complexity, and we have freedoms. And you have to understand it's precisely because we have freedoms that there is uncertainty. Because you depend on me and I depend on you, and we are both free to take actions, we don't know how things are going to work out. And because we depend on each other in many ways, there is complexity. So it's constructed uncertainty, we create the uncertain world, and there is high interconnectedness. So how do you deal with this environment? Well, one way to think about uncertainty is the old way of the ostrich. Just hide your head in the sand and hope it will go away. Many times when you read statements about our country's problems, try to see if this is the way we're addressing the problem. Now, hopefully there is always someone standing up. Quite often that someone who is standing up is a woman, while all the men have their head in the sand. That's one way. The other way, they kind of expropriate one of my favorite politicians, Winston Churchill, when he said, we will fight on the beaches, we will fight on the rooftops, we will never surrender. So sometimes we take this, we will fight, we will object, no to this, no to that. And then we get more in the vicious circle. And here is an example of how it happens in economics. You lose the confidence of the markets. Because you lose the confidence of the markets, interest rates go up. Because interest rates go up, you say, we're not going to pay. And then you lose more confidence of the markets, and the rates go more up. And then you say, still not going to pay. It's a vicious circle. Winston Churchill was not fighting an enemy within. He was fighting an outside enemy. If the enemy is the vicious circle, you cannot fight it. You make it worse. You have to reverse it. So Winston Churchill, I think, he would like us to rethink uncertainty, looking at an old Chinese general, Sun Tzu. In times of war, you need to be adaptable and flexible. In times of high uncertainty, we need to be adaptable and flexible. Then we have to rethink complexity. We have to empower people to take action. We have to rethink about the institutions that take action at the social level, and you have to bring in expertise, not necessarily experience. They say experience is what you gain by reacting to leadership of others. To be a leader yourself, you have to be empowered. At the society level, you have to organize institutions to empower society, and you have to have expertise about the problems you are dealing with. And finally, you have to regenerate. We have to regenerate our values. Our people on this island survived for many years, for centuries, by pushing all the foreigners out. The foreigners are our enemies. And we're here, close in our circle, to protect ourselves. This was a wise strategy. We avoided assimilation through the centuries. But now we are part of this bigger society. We are part of the globalized world. We are part of the European Union. So we have to rethink the values, who is us and who is them. Maybe it's all us. Maybe it's not about fighting each other. Maybe it's about co-optation, cooperation, and competition. We have to think about social organizations. Stop waiting for a democratically elected president as opposed to the queen or the sultan to decide everything. We should organize our societies to take actions. And of course, politics should not be about politics for the sake of power. It should be policies for solving society's people. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Not government of the political parties, by the political parties, for the political parties. So in conclusion, to start a revolution, as Marina said, react, rethink, regenerate. Go back to how we act. Ambivalence, postponement, incompetence, lack of confidence. How do you reverse this vicious circle? Self-confidence. We are now free. We are highly educated. And we have a new generation of people that take initiatives and organize events like TEDx. articulate a vision for our future. It's not about solving day-to-day problems. It's about what do we want to be when we grow up as a nation. And now we are growing up. At an individual level, I don't want to admit it, I turned 50, but as a nation, we are growing up. And once you have a vision, you can take initiatives. And once you take initiatives, if you deal with them with professionalism and responsibility for each other, then you succeed. And because you succeed, you feel self-confident, and because you are self-confident, you have more ambitious visions, and you take more initiatives, and you discover that not always, but many times, things work well. As it has been said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. If you are confident, have vision, take initiatives, act with professionalism and responsibility towards each other, we will look at fate smiling at us. So my conclusion, to start a revolution from the black world of slavery that we have inherited after centuries and move to the world of freedom and hope, we have to create. We have to take initiative. And we have to react, we have to rethink, and we have to regenerate. But this is not easy, because it resists. So dear TEDxers, Marina, thanks for inviting me. And the orange arrow, the arrow of creativity, is up to us, and especially up to the young people of the country, to take the fate in our own hands and go for it. Thank you very much.